This Butter Buffalo Buttermilk Chicken Sandwich on a maple butter biscuit contains no butter, no chicken, and no milk, and it starts with this can of chickpeas. Now with this recipe, we're going to be using the chickpeas to make like a chickun, and I've done that quite a few times, but what we're going to be doing differently here is we're going to be making like a very thin, kind of like almost like a pounded chicken sandwich. Now, I normally wouldn't have made this or thought about this, but my buddy Steve over at Not Another Cooking Show made a chicken-based version, and I thought, well, let's make it plant-based. And I also wanted to say, I think it's time I brought back the apron. My shirts have been getting too messy. It's time to bring the apron back. It's been a little while. So first thing that we're gonna do, like always, drain your chickpeas, save the aquafaba. You need to always save aquafaba because it is so incredibly useful. So now all we need is just a blender or food processor. We're gonna toss our chickpeas into the blender along with some sort of broth. Now normally this recipe is based off of chickweed from Avocadoandales, and she uses the aquafaba, but I'm gonna save that later and we're just gonna make kind of like a broth. You can use like a vegetable broth, mushroom stock, anything that you really want. I'm just gonna be using about 1.5 teaspoons of mushroom seasoning to make like kind of like a mushroom broth. Now we also need 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, about a tablespoon of onion powder, teaspoon of garlic powder, 2 tablespoons olive oil, and to really kick this up into like some chickeny high gear, we're gonna be adding about a teaspoon and a half of dill pickle juice. Now just toss in the lid, throw this on high, and blend this up until it's incredibly smooth. We want like just like a thick kind of liquid. Now when this is done, give it a taste. It should have kind of like a chickeny taste to it. It really does. It's very surprising. If yours doesn't, adjust for flavor. Now this next ingredient, some might say is one of my favorite because I've been memed to be called gluten stache, but the next one up is just gluten flour. It makes a great meat replacement, which is why it's used so much, and there's really not a replacement for it. We're gonna be using about 1.5 cups in here to make this. Throw it in, start the blender, and get it going. If you can't use gluten, I mean, there's loads of other recipes. Check out anything that uses mushrooms. If you don't like mushrooms, check out textured protein. If you don't like textured protein, try jackfruit. So now just let this knead in the blender till it all kind of comes together. That's forming those bonds, tearing those pieces of gluten, and forming those really nice chickeny fibers. So once this is done blending, pour it out. We're gonna work this together really quick. We just need to bring it together into a solid ball. And like, I first attacked this like I was filleting it. I don't know why I did that. I thought that would be a good idea to kind of cut the top off, but this is dough. You can manipulate it how you want. So after that, I just went ahead and cut off to like chicken breast sized pieces, quickly pounded them out flat. Now I was trying to think of how to get these to be super juicy pieces, and I think deep simmer, like a steam, is going to be the method to do it. So I'm gonna be using my Only pan, and that's just because it's like large and flat and has like the steamer basket, but really any method of steaming that you're gonna do will work. You can even kind of allow it to simmer a little bit. But that being said, I steamed these for about 30 minutes. They are thin enough that the gluten is pretty much done by this point. Normally with gluten, you want it to cook for much longer, but here the 30 minutes is gonna be it. Now I'm going to let them rest for a little bit after they're done steaming. That's going to allow the gluten to kind of like relax a little bit and actually tighten up and give you a firmer piece of like chicken. I was able to make 5 pieces out of this, but realistically, I would say you could probably make 10 reasonably sized sandwiches. I was going after the look that Steve had, where like the chicken was hanging out over the edges, but once I built this sandwich in the end, you'll see that you could cut these in half. Now I stacked these into a container and tossed them in the fridge for about an hour. I think that's enough time to allow them to kind of rest and kind of firm up a little bit. Now these Butter Buffalo Buttermilk Chicken Maple Butter Biscuits need some butter in it at this point. So let's make some vegan buttermilk biscuits. And actually, I don't have a recipe for these, so I'm just gonna be using the one from my dude's book, Vegan Fast Food. This is from The Burger Dude, and this book's amazing if you haven't picked it up yet, so you should. I'm gonna leave a link down below. Now his biscuits are some seriously hot biscuits. I was trying to think of a funny way to say that, but they're good. You make them just like regular biscuits. I'm using a frozen vegan butter. I'm just following along with his recipe, except for the buttermilk. I'm gonna make that my own. For this, I'm just gonna be using a pinch of lactic acid in some oat milk. I think that's gonna work plenty fine for making kind of like a soured milk feeling. Then we just need to quickly work this together, work it into a dough, and then cut your biscuits. I mean, like I said, you just make it like normal biscuits and they come out really, really good. I got about 4 or 5 biscuits out of this, and then just maybe like a few smaller ones. I'm gonna toss these in the fridge until everything's ready to go. I just want these to be cool before we start to bake them. Let's give this about 30 minutes. That's all you need. Okay, we're back. So let's bake the biscuits. The biscuits just need tossed in the oven about 450 degrees, and we're just gonna bake them for a few minutes and then pull them out, and this is where our buttermilk biscuits get some butter. So now we're gonna melt about 2 tablespoons of vegan butter, and then just brush each one of these biscuits and toss them back into the oven. Now for the rest of this butter, let's make the maple butter that I was talking about. And the maple butter, I don't even know how many times I've said this now. All it is just a simple mix of melted vegan butter and maple syrup. I'm just gonna whisk this together kind of rapidly, form some air bubbles, toss it in the freezer, and that should thaw up without separating. If it starts to separate, check it after a few minutes, continue whisking it until it doesn't separate any longer. Now at this point, pretty much everything's made, the biscuits are cooling, we just need to put these together. So I'm gonna set up a 3-plate breading system with aquafaba, flour, and plain panko. Now Steve's recipe calls for seasoned breadcrumbs and panko. I'm just gonna be using panko, and I'm gonna season everything with the same thing: garlic, parsley, oregano, basil, and thyme. And like I said, I'm gonna do that in everything: the aquafaba, the flour, and the panko. I think that's really gonna drive that seasoning deeper into the mixture here and give you a lot more flavor. So I'm just gonna flour these up how you normally would. Start with the flour, into the aquafaba, and then pressed into the panko. I like how Steve kind of pressed his all in. That's gonna work really well with seitan, I think. I think it's gonna really give it like a nice texture. So we're gonna kind of press these down in. Now I'm gonna mess up on this first one. I started with about a 50-50 sunflower oil and olive oil mix to fry these, but that was actually a bit too much. You don't need that much oil to fry these seitan pieces. They're already cooked. We're just browning the crispy pieces. So I'm just gonna set it over a medium heat. I got it hot, toss them in, fry them for about 7 minutes on each side. The first one came out okay. Like I said, the oil wasn't hot enough and there was too much oil soaked in. It ended up being a very greasy fry, which is not my best. This is just the test version for me. For Monica's sandwich, I didn't add any more oil. I tossed these in, just enough oil to cover the bottom of the pan, and fried them up on each side, and these came out a lot crispier, and they seem to be a lot better in my opinion as far as like a better fry. Now while I was making these, I also tossed some hot sauce into a pan. You could use Frank's Red Hot if you want, and I just brought that up to a simmer. Once it was simmering, I tossed in some cold vegan butter, pulled it off the heat, let that melt, and whisked it in, and it came out nice, thick, and creamy. Now let's put together. Grab our biscuits, cut them in half, spread on some of that maple butter, toss on the chickpea chicken. Now I could have tossed the chicken in the sauce like Steve did, but Monica and I are in our 40s, and my stomach just cannot handle it anymore. So I'm just gonna spoon this one on kind of lightly. And then here it is, our butter buffalo buttermilk chicken sandwich on a maple butter biscuit. I mean, this just looks insane. I can't wait to see what Monica has to say. Cheers.
Yeah, this is really good. It reminds me of chicken.
Yeah.
It tastes a lot like kind of like a breaded like chicken breast.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, it's firm on the inside, but it's not too firm. It's got a little bit of softness and tenderness to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I'm really digging it.
Just try the biscuit.
The biscuit's delicious.
Right?
I love it. I would love the same amount of chicken on the biscuit. But that's no problem.
I don't have anything to say other than this is a really good sandwich.
I really like it.
I am beyond stoked about this.
It's really good when you bite into the chicken and the biscuit.
Yeah.
It's got a really good flavor.
Great sandwich combination idea. Brian, great biscuit. All in all, it was a great sandwich, and really, it was kind of like an adventure to make. I mean, all of the parts and pieces, and there's nothing more adventurous than being able to win a custom Mercedes Sprinter van with an eco-friendly VanSmith conversion from today's sponsor, Omaze. Omaze launched with a mission to transform typical charitable giving. So right now, Omaze has a sweepstakes where you have a chance to win the ultimate off-road van, a Mercedes Sprinter with over $85,000 in customizations, including VanSmith's Green Package. You're going to hit the road in the ultimate home on wheels with a full modern kitchen so you can make all of the chickpea chicken sandwiches that you like and need, along with tons of storage, a comfortable full-size bed, and a lot more. Along with solar panels, a freshwater system, and the taxes and shipping are included for US winners. And the best part is, all of this comes at the support of a great cause. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital is leading the way the world understands, treats, and defeats childhood cancer and other life-threatening diseases. So gang, head over to omaze.com/Saucestache and enter now. That's OMAZE.com/Saucestache. You can click the link in the description below and enter now. The earlier you enter, the more prizes you can win, including $10,000 in cash if you enter by January 13th at 11:59 Pacific Standard Time. Omaze is a win-win. I love that you could support a great, worthy cause while also having the chance to win something pretty epic yourself. Thanks, Omaze, for sponsoring today's video and for helping transform charitable giving. It's pretty amazing.